My name is Talia, and welcome to this morning's call with the Jerusalem Press Club. With less than a month and a half before Israelis head to the polling stations to elect their leaders for the 5th time in 3 years, they will have plenty of parties to choose from, including 11 that are currently, according to the polls, more likely to pass the voting threshold than others. In 2 polls conducted by the 2 major commercial news television channels over the weekend, neither the right or left bloc will reach the 61-seat majority needed to form a government. However, each show a clear preference for the Netanyahu-led bloc with 60 seats and the current coalition members lagging at least 10 mandates behind the Likud. The biggest question now is how the split between the Arab parties will affect the right and left bloc's ability to form coalitions, as Mansour Abbas is being predicted to be this election's kingmaker. To pick apart what the latest figures mean is veteran pollster Rafi Smith, who heads the Smith Institute, one of the leading independent research institutions in the country, involved in virtually all of Israel's election campaigns, both nationally and locally. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Mr. Smith.
Rafi.
Thank you, Rafi, for joining us. Can you give us a summary of the current figures as you know them?
Well, the current figures are that up until this weekend, the what they call the BB group, the BB side, had about between 59 to 60 seats. We assume that now with the Arabs, they are more close to the 60, even maybe a bit more. But there always an effect that you have to check out 2 or 3 days before, after the surprise that came out Thursday night. Nobody thought that there will be that kind of a split in the Arabs list. So I think we're actually starting in about 60 seats to the Labor camp, to the Likud camp or the right-wing camp. Just let me say before that, for the last 4 years, I am the main pollster for the Likud since June 2018. So I followed the elections through with the Likud for the last 4 years. Just to make it clear, so that everything will be transparent. In any case, the figures are at this point that it's close. It's about 60-60, and we still have to see how the turnout will come out. So still 40, 48, 40. I don't count the days. I already forgot to count the days. Too many days to count till the elections. So we have to see how the dynamics will come out at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you. Could you perhaps explain after what happened with the Arab parties, the fact that they decided not to run together, how much this will impact the elections process now?
Okay, let me explain. Let me say a few words the way I see the election with the Arabs, with the dynamic up until now. The numbers that I actually look for in the last 2 or 3 months is 45 seats for the Likud and what we call Smotrich. Okay, the election in Israel goes. The previous election, my theory was 30-20-10. In order to for the right-wing parties, Likud party to get 60-61 seats, which the Likud aim was to get 30 seats. The Haredi group, Shas and Aguda, with Smotrich about 20 seats, and Bennett they were hoping that he would get about 10 seats. It worked. It worked not until the end, in the way that the Likud got 30, the Shas and Smotrich got 22, that was 52, and Bennett got only 9 seats, that was 59, okay? After that, everything changed. Bennett decided to go wherever he wanted to go, but in any case, that was the way I was looking at the previous election. This election, I look at the numbers 45 to 15, okay, or 16, meaning 15, 16 for the block of Shas and Aguda. They're actually, with their demography, they should get about 15, 16 seats. This is what they normally get. This is what the demography shows. So the Likud and Smotrich, who got previous election 36 seats, they need at least 9 more seats to get to their number, which is about 44, 45 together. Okay, this is the number I always look for. Okay, doesn't matter if the Arabs come out, don't come out. That's the number we are looking for in order to get their majority. Okay, of course, the turnout is the main issue here, but in any case, that's the number I look for. Now, where they tend to get those 9 seats from? Bennett and Gideon Saar, they got previous election 13 seats. Most of those supporters were right-wing voters, okay? So they hope to get at least from that 13 seats. They want to get at least of course, as more as they can. At this point, they get between 5 and 7 seats more, 5, 6 seats, about that number. But they still are short in the turnout, that they need more turnout in the right-wing parties. It is known in Israel that what we call center and left people come in a vast majority to vote, okay? The numbers which you have to look for at the Jewish sector is you have to understand that the figure that you see that is published by the election committee is not the exact number. Let me explain that so you'll understand. In the list of people that can vote in Israel, there are about 6,800,000 people who are capable to vote. You don't have to register, you are there, okay? But if you live outside of Israel, you cannot vote. There are about more than 10 to 12% of the people, citizens of Israel, who live abroad, and they cannot vote by email, by whatever you figure out, or by mail. You have to be in Israel in order to vote. So there's about 500,000 and more who are actually not in Israel on the day of the elections, or they cannot vote, or actually people who are not here not vote. So actually the actual list is around 6,200,000. That's actually the figure of the people who actually can vote, can actually vote. And the number that they give is from the total 6,800,000. So actually the vote of the Jews, who are about 85% of that list, about 15, 16 are about the Arabs, 15, 16%. Actually, more the numbers of the Jews that come out and turn out and vote is 80% more, between 80 82%. That is the actual Jewish vote in Israel. The Arabs, because the number of Arabs that are out of the country is small, they're about today a million, a bit about more million in the list that they can vote, in the list of the formula list. They are about a million, bit about 1,050,000. They're actually here. Their turnout was actually changed dramatically in the previous election. Okay, in 2020, in 2019, they got 13. They ran together. They got 13 seats. In 2020, they voted 63%, which was one of their highest ever, and they got 15 seats. In the last election, they went down to about 43%. Okay, so they only got about 10 seats, and actually about the way they allocate themselves, the 85% of them vote for the Arab list, and about 15-20%, around that number, vote for what we call, let's say, Jewish parties. Okay, so now the actual number which we have to look for the Arabs, if they are about 1 million, if half of them come out and vote, that's about 500,000. In order that the 3 parties will cross the threshold, which is basically around the number that you have to cross the threshold in Israel, is there 140,000, between 140 and 150,000 votes. Okay, let's be more conservative. Let's make it 150. That means that and assuming that the Balad and Hadash and Tal and Ram want to cross, each one of them has to get at least 150,000 votes. So they have to come out higher percentage and distribute their vote. According to what I told you, they need at least 140,000 votes. At this point, what we know is that Balad has a problem more than any other. Okay, they haven't ran independently for a long time. It is at this point looks like they are short, if short, and also Mansour Abbas and Ram are about fragile, but it looks like they are more than they have a bigger chance to cross the threshold and get about 140, more than 150,000 votes at this point. But of course, it depends how the turnout will come out at the end, and if they will really allocate it right. If they come out 500,000 or even more, and only less than 150, 140 votes for one of those parties, they don't cross the threshold. If you don't cross the threshold, then actually it gives out the right-wing parties at least 2 more seats more to that side. Assuming, there is what we call a surplus agreement between the parties, which means if you vote for the Likud or for Smotrich, the way they allocate the results is that actually when they divide the mandates, there's a way to allocate it, and if you vote for a party which their surplus and the other party is bigger, then you get at least 1 more seat more. Never mind, it's a bit more complicated than that. But in any case, if you don't have an agreement, at the end of the day, if you don't have a surplus agreement, you actually, at the end of the day, will lose. Can lose at least half a mandate or even a mandate. In the right-wing group, all the parties that take part, okay, which is Shas and Aguda, they have an agreement. Smotrich and the Likud have an agreement. That means all the votes that goes for the right-wing parties, at least at this point, it doesn't look like, or at least a small portion of them will go to what we call down the drain. In the left, there are, let's say in the Arabs, there are 3 lists, okay? If 2 of them make an agreement and the third one doesn't have it, that could be also a bad thing for them. Also, Lieberman doesn't have an agreement with any parties. In order that, so that is also an issue that can hurt or helps at this point the right-wing parties to maybe cross the 60, 61 seats.
Okay, thank you for that. So basically, the bottom line is that a lot of the parties on the right do have the surplus agreements, and they also chose to run together in a few different lists, contrary to the left. So how do these decisions, both not to have a surplus agreement and not to even run together joint lists, like in the past we had Labor and Meretz together, how will this impact the election? And can you maybe explain what the thought process was, why they decided not to run together, at least on the ideological left?
Well, I will say that because actually it goes as far as this way. If you look at the left, at the left side of the map, put inside for a minute the Arab lists, okay? Because up until Thursday night, 11 o'clock at night, everybody thought that they will run as one list, okay? Meaning 2 lists. Mansour and they combined other lists, Arab lists. At this point, I think if you look at the Labor and Meretz, one of the main issues is that in the previous election, they got 13 seats, okay? The assumption was that if they would run together, at this point, all of them are getting low numbers in the surveys. At least as part of them, they are running, at least at my surveys, they are both of them between 4 and 5 seats. Okay, so and they have an agreement, so it's about 9 seats together. Once you put once you put the agreement there, people assume they run together. People assume that they will get a higher number than 4 or 5 in order to pass the threshold. And they will vote for Lapid. So Lapid can go and mainly Lapid can go and try what we call to drink the party. Okay, it doesn't matter if they get 8 or 6 seats, the joint list together, Meretz and Labor, if they will cross the threshold. So he will gain at least 2 or 3 more seats for him, because people will assume that the Labor and Meretz party joined together will pass the threshold, so they can, instead of voting to help them cross the threshold, they can vote for the Likud, for Lapid, they can vote freely. That's the game. The main thing strategically that Lapid wanted to do is that they will run together, and in order that the people will see in the polls that they're getting 8, 9, 10 seats or more, say, okay, so we are safe. Now we can vote for Lapid to be a bigger party than he is. And so for him, that's the way I see it. It's very, very simple way why he wanted them to put them together. At this point, because in the previous election, people thought, they were afraid that the Labor and the Meretz maybe will not cross, and what we call a Gewalt campaign. Okay, we know that Meretz are the number 1 in the world for Gewalt, a campaign in the previous election in Israel. They always attend at the end of the day, they run way after save us, save us, save us, save us, save us, and they get at the end they cross the threshold because they're always low in the polls. So that's I think was the merit for that. Gantz this time, Lapid in the previous election went with Lieberman together, and they earned, of course, at least 1 mandate for that. And Gantz was on his own, so whatever he got from the people, his surplus was too small to get any more mandates. This time, because of the game between maybe Lapid and it's Lapid and his guys, or maybe Gantz, they decided to go together with Gantz and put at this point Lapid was on he runs, and as far as I know at this point he doesn't have any agreement. If you have an agreement with a party that doesn't cross the threshold, the surplus agreement doesn't work. Okay, both parties have to cross the threshold in order that the agreement of the surplus votes will come out. Now, let me say a few more things about the turnout, okay, which is once the beginning started in Israel, we always knew that the Arabs turnout and the Jews turnout will have a very important impact on the results. Mainly the Arabs, as I told you before, they can go up and down. So actually, the Arabs, if you look at it, if they come out 40-45%, they give about 8 at this point. In the previous election, they gave about 10 seats for the Arab list and another 2 seats for the Jews. Okay, mainly, don't forget, they gave the Likud 27,000 votes, which was about 2/3 or 3/4 of a mandate. Okay, and the previous election before that, the Likud only got about 10,000 votes. So they went up 2.5. They went out. They increased their support there for 2.5%, 2.5 more, multiplied by two more, at least 2.5. Now, so that puts them together that about 107 mandates are allocated by the Jews in the previous elections, and about 12 to 13 seats were allocated by the Arabs vote. Now, we know that the right-wing people, or I would say that the center left in Israel always vote high. They always come out even higher than 80%, as I said before, in the Jewish vote. Okay, they come out to 85%, even more, around that number. The right-wing people, we know that. Let's say in 213, the Likud in the south, which is basic, they get more support there than the average. They lost at least 2 seats because of low turnout. 215. Once they came out more, they gained those 2 points. They got more votes, two more seats, at least two more seats more, or even more than that, because of the turnout in the South. We know that in right-wing areas, the right-wing people, their turnout is lower than those of the center left. And if you can see both parties, or at least the right-wing parties, they make a lot of effort to increase the turnout, what we call VOT, get out the vote, which is a known phrase. They have to turn out the vote in order, as I said before, in order that they will get at least more. They have to get at least more 2 or 3 more seats from a higher turnout in their areas.
Understood. Thank you. You've seen, surprises over the years. Do you expect any this time around, a party that perhaps wasn't expected to pass the threshold that suddenly will, or the other way around?
We know, actually, the bloc in Israel, and if you look at the previous 4 elections in Israel, it was always about the same, okay? No big changes, okay? The change came out basically because in the first round in April 2019, Lieberman decided the right wing got 65 seats, and Lieberman decided not to go with Netanyahu. That's basically the reason we are talking now. Okay, that's the basic reason we are talking now. He decided that he will not go with Netanyahu from various kinds of reasons. Okay, his own personal reasons. But in any case, we keep on going to do polls to see the last dynamics, and we see that basically 15% of the people decide at the end of the day, in the last 2 or 3 days, who they're at the end of the day they're going to vote for. So they know before that, they know who they tend to, which camp they are, and so forth. But they decide at the end of the day, at least 1 of 6, 1 of 7 decided the last few days of the elections. It's not that they are all in the same group. It splits around, okay? But let's say we know for previous elections, let's say many years ago, the veteran parties got at least, that was in 200, that was about a decade ago and more, they decided they're going to vote for the veteran parties, which actually the last surveys that were published showed that they were crossing the threshold. So a lot of disappointed people decided to vote for them. They had no one to vote for, so they got at the end of the election 7 seats, and a lot of people who are under 50, at the age of 50, voted for them because they didn't have anyone to vote for. We know that the Lapid party in 2013, 8 years ago, they got at least 5, 6 more seats at the end of the day, in the end of the election, because they were on the right, they got their dynamics right at the end. So, but those were people who were always at the center left, but they decided at the end to go vast majority to vote for Lapid. So we don't know exactly. Maybe there's only one party, 2 parties we can talk about that have a problem now. One is Ayelet Shaked, okay, Ayelet Shaked. Up until now, she gets only about between around 1.5% to 2%, which the threshold is 3.25%. So she is a problem. She is one of the concern that, or one of the concern now for the Likud side, because she's actually attracting more right-wing voters. Okay, so my assumption is that if she will keep, the polls will show that she keeps getting low numbers, there will be a lot of waste. A lot of people, politicians in the right, will try to tell her to decide at the end of the day not to run, to retire from the election, in order not to waste vote. Or I will give you another scenario, which has very a low probability that if they see in the poll that she's getting close to the threshold, let's say she gets 3%, 3.5%, then the Likud and the right-wing camp maybe will try to help her cross the threshold at the end of the election, okay, not to waste votes. But if they see that she's only 1% or 1.5%, they will try to tell her to decide not to run until the end in order not to waste votes. That might happen, but we have to see how the dynamics will come.
Okay, we've actually just had a flood of questions coming in from journalists,
Okay,
so
go for it.
bear with me for another few minutes.
Sure.
One of the questions was, you mentioned several times actually that that there's quite high voter turnout among the center left. Can you explain why this is?
Well, this is a tradition. Why they come out? You have to understand, in Israel, the turnout in Israel is one of the highest in the world as far as the Jews. I'm saying, put aside a minute the Arabs. In the 90s, I don't know if ever any one of you were here in the 90s, but in any case, 20, 30 years ago, 90% of the people who were in Israel were voted. Okay, now it went down to 80. It's down. It's low. People in Israel, it's a tradition here. People come and vote. So that's actually comes out from the beginning of the state. But in any, it's a free day, and whatever other reason, this is like a tradition here to come out and vote. Now, more at the end of the last decade or so forth, there are people who came out who were disappointed from the system. They have no one to vote for, maybe last of confidence in politicians. So it went down from 90 to 80%. And I would say that why is it people from the right wing? Well, some of them, let's say, even the Russian compound, because some of them, as I said before, some of them came to Israel, and a percentage higher, relatively, a group of them went back to Russia. They're still listed here, but they never got into the society and voted for. And also, maybe some more of the less educated, some people who have trouble getting to the ballot to vote. It's all kind of various reasons why it came out, but it's known, or people cannot, they know that in the right wing, but they cannot vote for the other side. They're disappointed from both sides, and mainly, maybe even more on their own side, and they don't come out and vote. So it's actually, from various reasons, it came out to that point. I would say the main reason is some sort of a disappointment from the system.
Is that similar to also the low Arab turnout?
No, the low Arab turnout is a more ideology reason. There's at least a big portion of ideology about it. Okay. In the past, in the 40 years ago, 50, when the states was formed in the 50s, 60s, a lot of the Arabs came out and voted for, half of them even voted for Zionist parties. But that was when I was a kid. So that was about, 40, 50 years ago. In the last 20, 30 years ago, they didn't come out. They came out for a lot when they're at the direct elections. They voted very vastly for Ehud Barak in one of the elections in the late 90s, but after that they were disappointed in the October things that happened in 22 years ago, and then they didn't come out. Their turnout went down. So because of that's more of ideology with the forming of the state here and so forth. That's the Arab reason. More
so just
than in the Jewish sector.
Right. Okay. Two more questions, and then we'll let you go. One we just heard that that Israel Beitenu, headed by Lieberman, has applied to get Balad taken off from the list to prevent them from running.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think some sort of attempt by them to prevent voices to go to a party that won't pass the threshold that ultimately could have helped them form a coalition? Why else would they do this?
the way I think about it, that's a technical, that's there, but the main reason is that Lieberman is deciding to, he wants to increase his support in the Jewish sector, in the right wing secular people are voting for him, or not only there, he wants to get more votes because a lot of people in Israel dislike the Arabs, dislike Ballad even mostly, and he wants to get more votes from the Jewish sector. That's the main thing. He wants to show that he's leading there. He was known many years ago to say that I'm not going with the Arabs and I'm not going with the Haredim. So that's for him. That's the line he's trying to persuade people to vote for him, because he got previous election 7 seats. Now he's about 5.5, 6 seats in the some of the polls, some even polls. He was even had a lower than 5. So he's trying to attract more of Jewish vote with that message.
Okay, great. And just one final question. You already talked about the kind of discrepancy between the polls now and what we might see the weekend before Election Day. But what about the actual accuracy at the end of the day between the polls and the results themselves? I'm sure you get asked this all the time. So what's your opinion on?
Well, because basically what happened is
whether we should believe them.
Okay, look, because we actually poll, the last poll we do is basically Thursday, which is 5 days before the elections, in order to put them on the air Friday night or Friday morning. Okay, where you are not allowed to do more. The polls that we do actually until Monday night before the elections, they call the situation that close, because they can actually get the dynamics of the last 2 or 3 days. We cannot publish, so I can only tell you what we got, but it doesn't come out. So people say sometimes that the results that we put on air 4 or 5 days before the elections do not call right the elections, but I explain what actually happened, and we know that. And even though also during the day of the election we have some, the turnout is sometimes fragile. We didn't know, or it was hard to see the Arabs, let's say, going down from 63% to 43%. We thought they would vote 50%, but in the end of the day, they came out lower than that, okay, from various reasons. So the turnout, in some groups, the strategic turnout that came out in the left, that they even came out higher, and a lot of people decided to split their votes between, let's say, Meretz and Labor, or Meretz and Gantz. All those things actually have an impact at the end of the day. And the last 2 or 3 seats which are allocated by the surplus system, and the other way they do that, is sometimes hard to call.
All right, so I want to say very clear, but nothing really is clear just yet. Rafi Smith, head of the Smith Institute, thank you again for being with us, and we hope to hear back from you towards the end of the election cycle.
Okay.
And thank you to my colleague, Eli Klutzstein, for facilitating this call. Stay tuned for JPC activity and material on the election, including our October 3rd briefing with Dr. Khalil Shikaki on current Palestinian public opinion trends as we approach the election in Israel. You can find the invitations in your inboxes soon. We hope you enjoyed that briefing by the Jerusalem Press Club. If you did, like the video and hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all of our future content.